And joining us for more on this is Juan Carlos Hidalgo. He's the policy analyst on Latin America at the Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity at the CATO Institute. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Good evening.
Juan, Cuba's entry into the summit and the meeting between Castro and Obama is being hailed as historic. Is this overshadowing the summit?
Certainly. Well, there isn't much to expect from the summit anyway. As your correspondent was saying, like a joint declaration from all the heads of governments and state is not even expected. And we didn't have one 3 years ago at the summit in Cartagena. These summits are more about theatrics and about all the showmanship coming from certain leaders in the region than from policy substance. So, of course, the fact that Cuba is taking part in this summit for the first time, and the fact that President Obama is going to meet the Cuban leader in a more formal setting than a funeral, which is what happened in South Africa a couple of years ago, is overshadowing everything else going on in Panama right now.
Juan Carlos, doesn't President Obama need to show his critics at home that he hasn't gone soft on human rights? Should we at least expect him to call for broader political freedoms in Cuba at the summit?
Well, a couple of hours ago, he was meeting with civil society members, including Cuban dissidents. He invited along the presidents of Uruguay and the presidents of Costa Rica. You know that Uruguay, Costa Rica. He also invited the president of Chile, but she couldn't make it to Panama because she's facing a crisis with some floods in the north of the country. You know that these three countries happen to be the best run countries in Latin America. They are like stable democracies. They have left of center governments, but they have remained silent when it comes to human rights violations in Cuba and Venezuela. President Obama invited these three leaders to this meeting with dissidents, with civil society members from Venezuela and Cuba. So President Obama is doing his part to show people here in the United States and around Latin America that his administration is committed to the defense of democracy and human rights in Latin America.
Well, earlier you said that this is all theatrics, it's all just talk. What is the most tangible economic result that you actually think we can have coming out of the summit?
None.
None.
10 years ago, we had at least a hemispheric project in the free trade area of the Americas. That was a goal, a project launched by President Clinton in the 1990s that enjoyed wide support throughout the Americas. But when left-wing governments came to power, particularly former President Hugo Chavez and other leaders in the region, they aborted this plan in the America Summit in Argentina in 2005. And since then, there's no hemispheric economic goal or policy objective behind these summits. It's all about theatrics and all about these presidents coming with their pet projects and trying to present them to a broader audience.
Well, Juan Carlos, all about theatrics, but maybe some progress can be made on the migration front. We've got the leaders of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. They're pushing for the U.S. to support their plan to curtail illegal migration to the U.S. Any likelihood that some progress will be made on that front?
Indeed. Well, you don't need a hemispheric summit for something like that, But indeed, this is something that is being discussed. I'm highly skeptical of the idea of giving these countries $1 billion to help them fight poverty and security challenges. If we know anything from experience, is that when you give foreign aid to countries that have a bad policy environment, that have corrupt institutions, like is the case with these three countries, you don't help these countries, you actually exacerbate their problems. So I think that there are other ways to encourage these countries to reform and clean their act, but not giving them $1 billion.
Well, speaking of theatrics, we can certainly expect some from Venezuela. Venezuela is in the midst of a dire crisis. Its economy could shrink by 4% this year. Some economists at Bank of America have inflation hitting 200%. Oil prices are killing the country's economy. Is there anything beyond the theatrics that President Maduro could do at the summit?
Well, he's supposedly bringing 10 million signatures to President Obama to show, asking from Venezuelans, asking President Obama to lift sanctions on the country. We can expect much from President Maduro. Since he came to power, his government has been panicked and it has avoided any meaningful reforms. We have seen that the shipments of oil that Venezuela sends to Caribbean nations have halved since 2012. The country just avoided a default in the last few hours, but their reserves, its reserves are dwindling. And so we will expect that the political and economic crisis in that country is going to keep going in the weeks ahead.
Well, you seem very negative on any positive outcomes, but perhaps something positive will come out of this for Panama already. We did see a deal between Panama Airlines and Boeing. Copa Airlines signed a deal to purchase some Boeing aircraft, some cooperation on that front during the CEO summit. Is this perhaps something that can help put Panama more on the map? Panama's been trying to increase and legitimize its development and place as an advanced economy in Latin America. Some positive news coming for Panama, perhaps?
Panama is the fastest growing economy in Latin America. It's been growing at Chinese rates for almost like 6 years. And they just dodged a bullet in the last presidential election. The former president of Panama, Ricardo Martinelli, was a right-wing autocrat. He was corrupting institutions. He was attacking freedom of the press in that country. Unfortunately, his puppet, the guy he made run for president in order to stay behind the scenes, he lost the election. And now President Martinelli is out of the country being accused of major issues of corruption. So Panama has a story, a positive story to tell to the rest of Latin America. It is possible to get rid of corrupt politicians. It is possible to get rid of corrupt presidents and clean your act.
Juan Carlos, if your view is so pessimistic about the summit and you say it's theatrics and rhetoric, why have world leaders gathered here? Why have CEOs from the top multinational companies gathered in Latin America? What's the point of all this then?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe that it's positive that the United States is engaged in Cuba. I think that U.S. policy toward Cuba has been a major failure in the last 50 years. And finally, we have a president that is calling the bluff of Cuba and is engaging Cuba and is asking Cuba to make some amendments to the way it behaves, you know. But why so much attention? Well, there are a lot of cameras. There are a lot of business people. When you have the leaders of the 35 countries of the region, of course, there is going to be a lot of attention. But don't expect anything else. I mean, again, if you can name me a major accomplishment of these summits in the last 10 years, I will stand corrected.
Well, let's see how this one develops. I have a feeling you're going to be right on this one again, though. Thank you so much, Juan Carlos Hidalgo, policy analyst on Latin America at the Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity at the Cato Institute.